On the morning of August 1st, 1966, shots ring out from the observation deck of the clock tower on the University of Texas campus. It marks the infamous beginning of the modern era of mass shootings in America.
I'm Sarah Ferris, true crime podcaster.
And I'm Catherine Schweit, the former head of the FBI's active shooter program.
And you're listening to Stop the Killing. Welcome to another episode of Stop the Killing. Hi, Catherine. How are you?
Hi, I'm sleepy. So that's why I look like this, in case anybody's watching. But
If
but
you
I'm
are
good.
watching, you'll know that she looks amazing. As
I'm
usual.
sleepy. All that work behind me on the floor is like, you know, when the work spreads out in your office and then it spreads to the floor, and then you carry stuff to the next room because it's easier if you just do it out there because the room you're in that's
Yeah.
the stage I'm in right now. I have
Oh,
so much
no.
going on.
What are
It's all
you
good,
working
though.
on? Are you allowed to give us a little sneak behind the scenes of what's going on that you're working on?
Yeah, I am preparing to give a TEDx speech in
I forgot about that. I can't believe I forgot
so-
about that.
which I have to memorize, and so that's the hard part.
Yeah.
But then I've been invited to the Aspen Institute's Ideas Festival, and that's coming up, and that's kind of a think tank fun thing, so that'll be fun. And then in between all of that, I'm doing a million podcast recordings, but most importantly, I am halfway through my next book, and it is a barn burner of fun. But my goodness, it takes a lot of brain work to write.
Are you allowed
I think
to
it's a fun
give
book.
us a little clue as to what the topic might be?
I don't think these are incongruous. It's a really fun book about dead people.
Okay. Okay. Wow. When can we expect an announcement on that then?
I'd love to have it out this summer. So I have to really get a lot of work done in order to do that.
All right. Well, in that case,
I'm
let's
excited
not
though.
burn any more tape, as they say. I don't know if they say that. I just might have made that
Just
up.
see, I have a cool shirt on today for you Patreon people. It's my FBI Pride shirt. It says
that's
Pride on it.
cool.
And then it has an FBI symbol on it. And then it has the Pride streaks of color on it. I know I didn't really do a good job demonstrating it. It has the FBI seal on it.
Oh my God, where'd you
Yeah.
get one of those little puppies? Obviously the FBI
Yeah, you
merch
gotta
shop.
you gotta go to FBI headquarters to get that, baby.
I so need to come over and just get that tour. I'd love that.
Yes. Yeah, come on over. We'll go through the FBI tour. It's the coolest thing.
That would be.
It's the coolest thing.
Well, talking of FBI, that's why we're here today, is to use your expertise and look at a case that we haven't talked about before. So tell us all about the case.
In some ways, it's a very simple story. In some ways, it's a very useful story about a distraught person who reaches the end of his rope. And you can tell through some of the facts why he got to that point. And it really is it can be any of us. And that's why I wanted to tell this story. You know, who do you know who might be in this position? What would you do about it? Right? Which really kind of speaks to being the upstander. What does that really mean in these kinds of situations? In December at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, which everybody refers to as UNLV, but it's the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, there was a shooting on campus, and it was faculty members who were shot. So really, it would be more like you'd think, oh, maybe this is just workplace violence kind of situation. But it was very targeted. It was targeted violence. And this is why. The headline is that there was a 67-year-old man who was living in Las Vegas, and he was killed by police after he went into a building at UNLV, and he killed 3 faculty members and injured a 4th one. UNLV police did exactly how they were trained, right? The shooting started shortly before noon on a Wednesday. Police were there in, they say, 78 seconds. I don't know how
Wow. That is that a record? That's so quick.
I'm not sure exactly, but
Jeepers.
they were right there, right? UNLV police arrived in 78 seconds from the time they got their initial call, but then more officers came, but the first ones were there in 78 seconds. And he exited the building about 10 minutes after they got the first call, and he was confronted by the police. They engaged in a shootout, and the shooter was killed. So that's the whole story, but it isn't the whole story about how it came about. And I think to me, that's the valuable kind of lesson here.
Mm. Just for some clarification, you mentioned that it was targeted and that he went in and he killed 3 faculty members. And it was, I think you said noon. Was there students in the building and other people that he could have aimed at that he didn't?
He came to shoot faculty members. There's no question about that because of the circumstances. The faculty members were not in a classroom. They weren't in a classroom. There weren't students around.
Right,
But of
yeah.
course, somebody comes onto campus and with weapons, he could have shot a lot of students, right? I mean, it was a school day.
Right. So not the
yep.
indiscriminate shooting that we often see in the mass
Absolutely.
shootings.
No, these were business school faculty members. So the shooter is a college professor, but he's not a college professor here at this UNLV
Okay.
campus. He's a professor at East Carolina University, which is in North Carolina, halfway across the country.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not good with my geography with the US states, but I know that's a fair hike.
Right, halfway across the country. So actually, the people who he killed were Patricia Navarro-Felez, 39, an assistant professor of accounting, Cha-Jang Cheng, 64, who went by the name of Jerry, who's a professor in the management information systems. I know that's 2. I don't have the third member who was killed, his name. But before this occurred, and I mean just, kind of before the shooting, the police said that the subject had mailed 22 letters to employees at universities across the country, and at least one of them contained an unknown white powder that was later determined to be harmless. Okay, so now the added layer. Here's somebody who is angry at everybody, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, he's angry at everybody. By the time he got to UNLV and went inside the business school, this college professor had brought with him his 9mm handgun that he used and 11 magazines, 2 of which had been empty by the time he was killed. So magazines carry, depending on what his handgun was, 8, 10, 12 rounds. I'm not sure what he had. And so he fired at least, he fired more than a dozen times. That's how he ended up killing so many people. And he was ready to fire more because he brought 11 magazines with him. So he emptied 2 of them. So he came, which we see all the time. One of the precursors I see, if you have somebody that who is suddenly stockpiling ammunition,
Yeah.
that's to go. That is bad. Red flag,
Yeah.
right. Be an upstander. I mean, ammunition is very expensive. And I know people who buy their ammunition by the case. They have it shipped to them. I get that. It's not that. But I've never had to load and carry 11 magazines in my FBI career, right? I mean, I always carried a lot of ammunition, but 11 magazines are not what you're carrying for defensive protection.
It goes back to what you talked about, right back in series 1, and you were talking about atypical behavior. So yeah, somebody might get a pallet worth of ammunition every couple of months and then go out and do their target practice or whatever. But it's that behavior that's out of the norm for someone, isn't it? That you need to be red flagging over.
Right. And the idea that you have ammunition in your house and it's stored is one thing, properly stored. But the idea that you have magazine after magazine filled and that you're carrying it with you or you have it in your gun bag or your backpack or whatever, no, that is atypical behavior from almost everybody I know.
Okay, so just gun stupid here, as we all know. You're saying that when you say a magazine, you're talking about the actual clips that go inside the gun, right? That are already preloaded. So normally if you were stockpiling or you were buying your month's worth of ammunition, you wouldn't buy that in individual magazines because you would stop and reload the magazine. Is that, am I getting anywhere close to?
No, I think I love that. That's a great question because other people might not know. Say somebody in your house has right. But if that's perfect, because if somebody in your house has a gun and they do target practice or, or they keep it for protection or something, that's fine. When you buy ammunition, it generally stays in the box. You buy it by the box and the box might have, for a handgun, it might have 50 rounds in it. When you buy a gun, it often comes with the one magazine and you buy an extra one.
Right.
And so a lot of people might only have one, like you said, clip. And, clip is the idea of you slide it in and take it out, right?
Yeah.
And so you can take it back out and you can reload it. Now, say if I would go out to the range to practice as an FBI agent, I might have 4 or 5 magazines with me. I would load them before I left for the range. I would fire and empty all of those. I would stop, pull out a box of ammunition or 2, reload the magazines. So you don't buy magazines that are loaded. They're an empty piece of equipment. You buy the ammunition. It comes in a box. So the idea that you would have 11 loaded magazines, I mean, there aren't a lot of people who would have a reason to have 11 loaded magazines. So that's very much atypical. So you're right. And I'm sorry to go off on that rabbit hole.
Listen, I love this rabbit hole because we're always looking for those new kind of markers that we can find, and one that I would not have thought to look for. But can I ask you another question on that? Just because, we're looking at ways that we can, spot these before these mass shootings happen. In the cases that we've covered, is it typical to find that people have bought more than one magazine, like an atypical amount of magazines?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Okay. So I didn't even know that. That's incredibly important to know.
Good. Now, I mean, first of all, this is equipment. And like I said, ammunition's expensive. The equipment's expensive. So people are investing a lot of money, I mean, hundreds of dollars to get this additional equipment. And then they're going to carry it with them. And it's heavy. To carry 11 loaded magazines and your handgun is a heavy backpack. You're not going to the park for fun carrying that backpack.
Right.
Because ammunition is heavy. It is absolutely typical that people who commit these kinds of acts come to the scene with an extraordinary amount of ammunition compared to everybody else who's walking around. It is a really good Vegas bet to say that every officer that came to that scene had way less ammunition than this guy did. That is not uncommon. So
it's a good marker, people. If you've got somebody that that is ordering more magazines than they need, heads up.
This endless amount of ammunition is atypical behavior for many people. It's certainly worth an ask. And as we know, if you ask the person, they're going to tell you it's fine and there's no problem. You have to talk to somebody else.
Yes.
Talk to somebody else about it.
What's that stat that always floors me every time you tell me about people reporting back?
It's like 60% or something that turn back to the person who said it to them. And then the person just says, no, I'm just kidding. They're going to deny that. But
instead of reporting it forward, people are reporting it back and getting that sort of confirmation bias that they wanted to hear that.
That's right.
Everything's cool.
Yeah. Report it back if you want, but report it forward too. So this shooter, as I mentioned, was a faculty at another university. He was at East Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina. He had been an instructor in their business school for 16 years. And he stopped in 2017. I'm going to tell you, his age at the time of the shooting was 67.
Yeah, that did jump out at me.
Yeah, 67. So if you go back to 2017, he was maybe at a potential retirement age for the university or something if he chose to. But he had been teaching there for nearly 16 years and then he retired. But here's what they found. He was in financial trouble. He had moved to Las Vegas. But when the officers did the investigation, they found out that he had been served an eviction on his apartment. When they went to his apartment the day of the shooting, the eviction notice was tacked to the door. So he is clearly in trouble. He's got financial trouble. And as it turns out, he had been looking for a job, right? So he went to the business school and he doesn't get what he wants, but it's not something that happened at that moment, right? Because remember earlier I said he mailed 22 letters to employees at universities across the country. He's been looking for a job and he can't get one.
All right. So, but when he emailed those, was he looking for a job? Because you said that they had powder in them. That seems like a really bad way to get a job.
Yeah, you said he emailed them, which I think is hilarious.
I mean, sorry.
Right,
I'm a
that's
child
our
of the
so
times.
right. I know. I'm sorry. I'm old, so I write letters. I
When the
just mailed
pigeons
letters
delivered
yesterday.
the mail, they
Right.
had powder in them.
They had powder. Right. So the eviction notice is clearly like the triggering event. This has been cooking for a while. He moves to Las Vegas. He thinks he can get another job. He starts applying for jobs around the country. He gets no bites. Then he's angry. Then he mails white powder letters, which is probably a U.S. thing.
Oh
He
no,
mails
we
white.
know about the anthrax.
Oh yeah, okay. I didn't know how much you got. I didn't know you guys had that.
I don't think
threat.
we don't think we've had it, but we obviously knew about the anthrax threats that were going on.
Yeah, we try to be the first in every horrible thing
Well
here in the
done.
United States. Yes,
Nailing it.
yes, right, right, right. So you asked about the campus, so I just want to let you know the kids were in class. It was time for final exams. They were like just a week away from that. And when he came into the building, kids were actually exiting classes. So they heard the gunshots and they did what they're supposed to do, right? They ran back to their classrooms and turned the lights off, or they ran out of the building. And the business school is right like near the student union. It's right in the middle of the campus, kind of. It's a nice campus. And they could hear what was going on and the police coming and everything. Remember, I said the shooter came out of the building, they think about 10 minutes after he went in to start shooting. So he went in. That's what part of the concept of it's targeted. He knew exactly where he was going. He went in to shoot certain people. And I will say the fourth person who was injured was a visiting professor. It isn't that he knew these people and knew them. But then because of where he was, the business school is, as I mentioned, next to the student union. As I said, he came out 10 minutes after. Police estimated that he had about 150 additional rounds of ammunition with him. And they speculated, even at the time, that he could have moved into the student union where there were a lot of students. I mean, it was the heart of campus.
Yeah. Gosh.
Right. So,
Thank God they got there in 78 seconds.
yeah, exactly. I mean, the sheriff's office said the officers who responded likely saved more lives.
Sure.
He clearly had gotten to that point, right? He'd hit his limit. This shooter. And so that's the saddest part. That's the saddest part. UNLV is it's a short drive away from the Las Vegas Strip. And it wasn't that long ago, right, that they had the most horrific shooting we've had in the United States.
Yeah.
That was at the Live Nation concert at Mandalay Bay. And there were so many people injured and so many people killed when a shooter was just shooting from the windows of the Mandalay Bay Hotel. So the student population at UNLV is primarily people from Nevada, right? People from that state choose to go to that state school. So it was kind of unnerving to all of these kids because they had just dealt with, in their minds, right, in their teenage years, they had just dealt with what was really this horrific shooting at this concert. Everybody kind of knew somebody who had been there because of the span and the scope. So the students, they had to go to school and take their final exams and do their final projects and stuff like that. So it was just really, for the students, I think, kind of a eerie situation.
For those people that were at that university have been touched by this kind of violence in their community more than once. So how would you sum up this case in particular?
I think that the reason that I did want to talk about this is that no one thinks about a school shooting at a campus and thinks, oh, it's going to be, adults versus adults. But there are brittle people everywhere. And if they're college professors, they're likely to shoot at their college. If they're business owners, they're going to shoot at their businesses. If they're angry at the military, they're going to shoot at the military. And if they're students, they're going to shoot at their schools, right? Middle school students, high school students shoot at their own schools. People who are planning targeted violence plan it against the places and the people who they know. So remember that when you see people under stress, you're at risk. You have the best ability to see what might happen, the best ability to see somebody who is in a brittle state, a troubled person, and you have the best ability to interfere, and you are at the highest risk. You and those around you are at the highest risk. So you have the biggest incentive to be the upstander. And I don't think that we always remember that.
Thanks for listening. And if you want to know more, Catherine's book, Stop the Killing, is out now. For more details, go to catherineschweit.com. Please consider also supporting our independently made podcast. It's simple to do. Go to patreon.com/Stop the Killing. And for as little as the price of a latte a month, you can be part of the solution to stop the killing. Patreon rewards range from official do-gooder status to ad-free episodes, autographed books, and opportunities to connect with us directly for your business, school, church, or even just a book club chat. But just knowing that you are part of a movement that has the power to make your community safer, well, that's got to taste better than a skinny cappuccino any day. So please head to patreon.com/Stop the Killing now and polish off your do-gooder halo and make sure to include your name so we can give you a shout out. This podcast is a Community podcast production. That's Con with an N. If you want more content, then head over to Community Podcast at Instagram, where you'll find trailers on more binge-worthy true crime, like the award-winning podcast Conning the Con. And check out our show notes for all the links mentioned. Finally, if you want one takeaway action that you can do right now that can help make our community safer, please share, rate and review this podcast wherever you listen. Everybody needs to know that they hold the keys to see something and say something. Together, we can stop the killing.
It's one of those things you hope never happens, but you better train for it, because it will happen, and it will happen in places you wouldn't expect. Be ready for it.